Hello folks, this is an updated version of my Christmas tree pin class minus all the outdated promotional information. Thank you. Hello folks, this is the second in a series of videos. The first was my stripey block canes, which you can see in this video all the ornaments that are colored on the Christmas trees. We will be making shaded Christmas tree pins and ornaments. The Let's Build a Snowman class is now free on my YouTube video channel. Enjoy them both. There's a whole host of pins we will be making. Earrings. And ornaments. And that is my Build a Snowman class. I do have a quick video after this one. It's just 17 seconds showing my snowmen. And then we'll get right into the project. Colors that we are using. If you haven't watched my video for the stripey block cane, I will put the link in the descriptions. This selection of canes was all made in that process, and now I have them ready to use for all the different types of ornaments and tree toppers that I want to make for my pins. This is my green. I mixed the green. It's equal parts of cad yellow, cobalt blue, and wasabi. Then it is 1/32 of, in this case, burnt umber. If you watched my video for the stripey cane blocks, there's also my mud. You can use my mud, or you can use the burnt umber. I really suggest you use my mud if you're using these cane blocks as your decorations, because it will harmonize just that little bit more. But I don't think it's really that big of a difference either way. So you mix these three plus this 1/32 of the mud or the brown, and you get this green color. This is my light green. And in case you don't know how to cut 1/32, I will show you. If you're cutting out circles to mix with, when you cut it in half, you have two halves. When you cut those in half, you have 4/4. If you cut one of those in half, you have 1/8. Cut that in half, and you have 1/16. Cut that in half, and you have 1/32. Now, there's other ways you can do this. You can cut out 32 squares of the colors and 1 square of the brown, but that's the easy way to do it for how much clay you'll need. Okay, so that's the mix of the green clay. Now we'll be making the second color of green, the darker green. This is the darker green. And I have a bigger piece here leaching on paper. So I want it a little firmer for this process. But the darker green there's the light side of the tree and the shadow side of the tree. The darker green, once you mix up your mix of your green for the light side, take 3 parts of that green to a half a part of your mud or your burnt umber. And you get this mix. For your trunks, the colors on your trunks, there are actually 4 colors here. We have 2 greenish browns now. And you don't need to make a lot of this because you're only making trunks out of it. So I took one circle of this green, one part of this green, to a half part of my brown, and that made my lighter shade of brown. And then I took equal parts, 1 part to 1 part of the green, the dark green with brown to make my darker brown. It's not a huge difference, but you can see the difference. You can make that a little darker if you like. But those are our color mix. I wanted to show you about leaching clay. If your clay is real sticky, you don't get the preciseness that you want to have for these. So you roll your clay. This is on my number 5 on my pasta machine, which is fairly thin. Put it on a piece of copy paper and put it flat. You don't have to leave it on too long. If you sit on it, the heat from your body, 5 minutes or so, when that thin of a sheet will just firm it up and get the stickiness out. You will then have to recondition it because the outside will be more dry than the middle of the clay. So I'll come back when I have that conditioned after it's leached. And leach both colors of your green. You can also decide, if you decide to use the stripe block canes or some other just solid colors, you can roll those out to a number 4 on your pasta machine, a 3 or a 4. And I'll be back for the next step. While my clay is leaching, I'm going to make some sheets of my colored stripes. And I'll just, pick the colors I think I might want to use. And I will take a straight blade. Now, my stripey blocks have 2 sides. They have a stripe side, and they have, that's better on this one, they have a speckly side and a stripe side. For this, I'm using the speckly side, the stripe side. So I will need to cut with the stripes facing me. I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch thick piece. And I'm going to pinch it down flat to make sure that it's even. And then I'm going to start on my thickest setting on my pasta machine. And it's going to run through so that the stripes stretch long ways. I'm going to move it down to my next setting. And my 3rd setting, which is a number 2 on my pasta machine. And then to a number 3, which is my 4th setting. And then to my number 4, which is my 5th thinnest setting on my pasta machine. Now we have these nice stripes to use. Now I'll do this with multiple colors. Then we're going to take your texture sponge. And I do sell these. They're $3.50. You also get one free if you order either my Create template or my blend angle sets. We're going to mist the sponge with water. And we're going to run the stripes through the pasta machine 5 times. And each time we're going to reposition the clay just a little bit on the sponge. What this does is builds up texture. It also stretches your clay out even farther So you may want to do a test piece of clay on your 5th thickest setting. But this is very thin. It's a very thin sheet of clay. It's textured. And this will be for cutting out our ornaments. And I'll make several colors of these to have ready to use. One other thing about your clay, your green. If you decide you want to use a package green, that's fine. You know, I would suggest something from Christmas green more towards evergreen color to start with, but you can choose your own colors and make it your own. You could also use, you know, other colors like tan and brown, or a light blue and a dark blue, depending on, you know, what colors you're going to make for ornaments or what color scheme you're going to use. How much clay you'll need, it's really not that much. I make probably a half a block of the 2 greens and just a small amount for the trunks. Depends on how many pins you want to make. Just another word on the sponge textures. There are the ones I sell, which are these green ones. And then there's the clay yo sponges, which for right now are discontinued as far as I know. Hopefully they will be available in the future. They both do a great job of the pattern. You'll notice the green is slightly thicker than the clay yo sponge. So if you roll to a number 4 before you texture, and then put your clay through with the sponge on the number 4 if you're using the thinner sponge. If you're using a thicker sponge, go to a number 4. Then when you go ready to put your clay through on the pasta machine with the sponge, back up to the number 3 setting. Also, the best way to get your clay to go through easily, when you position it on your sponge, position just a little bit hanging over the edge. That way the roller will grab the clay and pull both through together when you're running it through. This one I did on the speckly side. And these are the ones with stripes. And we're going to be cutting little tiny circles out of here. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it. The goal is to have ornaments that have maybe 2 colors so they look like painted Christmas balls. And you will get that with either one. Okay, I've textured a selection of colors from my stripy cane blocks. And I'm going to put that aside. And these, I have these on patty papers, so I can just stack them carefully. There were a few I had already rolled out from my last project. And then we're going to do our trees. Okay, my 4 colors of greens have been bleached and then reconditioned. I have them on a number 2 setting on my Atlas, which is my 3rd thickest setting. I've washed my sponge to get all the colors out from texturing my stripy sheets of clay. And I'm going to texture all 4 of these on the number 2 setting. I will have to cut this into pieces because it's not going to fit on my sponge. Do that in 2. And then these 2 I can do by themselves. And I'll start with this color and go around the ring. And also I like to work on cardstock mostly. We will build our trees on tiles. My clay is all now textured. And we will start with our first tree is going to be, we're going to make all the bases first. And our first tree is going to be this 2-tone vertical tree. Now for those of you that have to have a template, I typically work freehand. I just cut and chop and build things. Now this is slightly bigger than this, but that's because we're going to trim to make sure it's right. But this is a triangle that is 2.5 inch tall. I'm sorry, 2.25 inch tall, and it is 1.5 inch wide. So if you want to make a template, you can cut that out and use that. I would suggest just cutting 3/4 inch strips. So here I have a little quilt grid. I'm going to cut a straight edge on my clay. And this only needs to be 2.5 inches, so there's a half one, roughly. It's just an approximate. I just need to be able to see both lines. So, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 inch. And I'm going to use this blade, it's thinner. Okay, and then we're going to do the same with our other green, our dark green. Get a straight edge. And then a 3/4 inch strip. And this is where you'd put these together. Make sure they slide together evenly. And we'll cut this straight. Separate my clay. Now you can just cut from the center point out to the corner. And then if you haven't messed up your edge, you will have a second one to put together. Okay, I'll set this off to the side. Now another thing, I work on cardstock. I also use cardstock. Oh, and these will be used as tools to move our clay around on. Set this out of the way. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little Bacon Bond on our tile. We're going to press these together, but we don't want to distort them. And if you over press them, you'll distort your clay. And this is just Bacon Bond. You can use liquid clay, but Bacon Bond I think works better. And I'm smearing it out in a thin film. Then I'm going to take my cardstock and I'm going to lay my tree in the puddle, and then take my sponge, gently press down, pressing the centers toward where the colors meet towards each other. And then you can, if you need to, straighten it out with your blade. If you need to, you can also cut it. I'm going to cut off the bottom and straighten that off. Wipe a little of the excess off. It's not a big matter. It'll come right off afterwards with a razor blade. Now we're going to cut the trunks. And you can decide how wide you want your trunk to be. I'm just going to cut a straight edge of both colors. Didn't cut very good, okay. And I'm gonna put them together. So I want my trunk to be probably a little over 1/4 inch wide. And it's between 1/4 and 1/2 inch wide. And then I want to make sure that I have 2 colors of clay here. I want to make sure that I keep the dark on the dark half and the light on the light half. I should have left a little of my puddle there. I don't need quite that much. I'm more worried about it being on the tile. I don't want it gushing up in between the pieces, because if it's liquid clay, it'll get a shine. If it's bacon bond, it could get a cloudiness to it. I'm going to line those up exactly with the center of my tree line. A little bit of white glue off of there. I'm pushing towards the tree and pressing down. Then I'll trim it off wherever I want. If I want a long trunk, I'll do it longer. Here's one with a longer trunk. This one broke, but I will fix it. Okay, that tree base is ready to get decorated. Our next tree base is going to be the one I broke here. Now to fix this, I can fix this very easily. Just put down a puddle of bacon bond and maybe put a thin slip on there. Push it together in the puddle and then rebake it, and that bacon bond behind that will hold it together enough till we have time to put the back sheet on. But I'm going to show you these shadow lines and how I make this tree. Now this one I definitely do freehand, but I will measure it afterwards so you can see how big it was. I'm going to get a piece of cardstock. And normally I'd have it a little, maybe a little wider than this, but I think that'll be good. So this is a tall, skinny tree. We need to cut it wider because we're going to be cutting some of the sides away. So I'm going to cut this to a point. And this one is the tree itself. It's just a little over 3 inches. I always cut it even bigger so I can trim off. We're going to cut it into thirds, with the top third being a little taller than the other two. So what I first do is I eyeball it and I cut a third, which is a little taller, and then I cut this one in half. Now you can see where it steps out here. So how we do that, we offset it about 1/4 of an inch. And then we follow the angle and trim it away. Then we'll put this one here. You can see how much bigger that is. We're going to, where this zigzag is, we're going to match that. So we're cutting even more off. This is how much we cut off of the middle one. We're cutting basically twice that much off of this one. And now I'm going to take a whole slice down my edge just to make it all straight. Now we have 3 pieces that the upper ones will overhang the bottom ones. And we're going to now put our shadow line in there. So the first thing we're going to do, and if you want a template, fine, I am cutting from this corner to the side of this one down about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to make the same cut on this one. I'm going to take that out. And then we're going to grab our darker green. And what I usually do first, I cut a strip that's a little wider than the thickest end of what I cut away. So I have a straight edge. I cut a strip, and then I'm going to just make sure it's a little longer than that is wide. And then I will cut this from corner to corner to make two shadow marks. And then this one will go here. And that one will go there. And you'll have to look and make sure that they're straight across, which typically they're not. You have to cut them so that they are a straight surface, so that when you put them together, if they're not straight, when you put your tree together, your tree will be crooked. Cut that off. I need to cut this one off too. That one looks straight. I believe I already cut it. So I'm just going to center that so there's the same amount of overhang. Now this is where you'll see if your tree is crooked, because your tree will tip at the top. And that's just a little adjustment of straightening out that cut. So that's our second shadow pattern. And I'm going to take a tile and do the same thing. Put some baking bond down. I probably will need a little more than that. Smear it around, trying to keep the general shape of the tree. It's a long triangle. Maybe move down a little for the trunk. You can always add more. I use my card stock to pick up the tree. And you're more worried about where they're joining as far as the bacon bond being there. Okay, we'll take our sponge and press the top towards the middle and the middle towards the top, trying not to distort. This one I'll do the trunk. Now this one, I don't think it really matters. I normally put the dark to the side where the shadow is wider. This works much better with cardstock because it doesn't stick like it does to your blade. Okay, and then I'll cut off our trunk. Now you can decide the scale on how big you want to make these. Keeping my clay separated so I can recondition it and remake a sheet. And that is our second shadow tree. So our next tree is going to be a combination of the two trees we've made. And for that, you need to make a third green color. So what I did is I took one part of my darker green with 1.5 parts of my light green. And I mix those together, and I will texture these all and be right back. Okay, I have my 3 colors. I'm going to cut a straight edge, and a straight edge on this one. And we're going to put those together. Then I'm going to cut out my triangle. I'm going to go for wider this time. This is my third, keep your colors straight. That's my middle green. That's my light green. We got our template. It's 2.5 inches tall. So you can see how much extra I have here, but I want to go wider this time. So I'm going to come down a little bit and go out kind of wide. Middle green. And make the same angle here. And of course I just used the wrong side of my blade. Okay. So I need to make that angle just a little less. Basically an equilateral triangle. All right, I'm gonna trim off the bottom. And the lighter green side is just slightly bigger, and that's perfectly fine. I think visually it helps the piece. All right, then we're gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna cut the top a little bigger than 1/3, and the remaining 2 parts in half, and have 3. Then we're going to offset it. I'm going a little wider here because I want my tree to be thinner than that. I'm going to trim off the excess. Have the same angle here, which means this is a lot more clay. And now we'll use the darker clay, just as before, to insert our shadow. So the first thing we're going to do is trim our angle off the top of the middle and off the top of the bottom section. And we'll cut a strip. That's just about as wide as what we removed. When you start working this thin, sometimes you just have to cut 2 separate ones, but a lot of times you get lucky and you get 2 nice equal pieces. I'm going to insert that till it looks mostly horizontal there. I may have to trim. And the same on this one. We're going to trim off our excess. And then we're going to check for level. I think this piece is just a little higher on that side. It was higher on this side. You'll know better when you push them together and they look really crooked. Now I'm centering the whole piece, not the middle line. I want my overhangs on both sides to be the same. That one looks pretty good too. Okay. All right, there you go. And then same thing with the trunk. I'm going to put a wide trunk on this one. This is my light side. This is my lighter clay. I cut a little bit wider trunk. If you want, you can angle, make your trunk a little more TP shaped if you like. And we'll put that in the center with the top line. And there you go. Now that one's kind of big. I would probably work a little smaller on that. This one, the ending result is 3 inches from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the peak. It's like 2 inches and 7/8, 2 7/8 inches. And at the widest point, it's a little over 2 1/4 inches. That would be the biggest I would ever go for a pin. Now, I use these in other ways besides pins, and I'll show you that. Let me get some of this out here. I use these trees in different ways. And now these are all pins and ornaments. But my class is going to be these SNOWMAN pins and ornaments. And sometimes I will make like a scene with trees in the back and snowmen in the front. This one here. You can take like a hurricane glass round candle thing and build a scene, a Christmas scene around it. These are some of my pins from the class. Let's put this one over here. And I will teach you how to make these snowmen, all components. You can see my stripy canes there. And you can make them in any size. And even here's a pair of earrings. The snowmen are my PCA 2021 class. And like I said, the link will be here in the bottom in the descriptions. If you'd like to join that class, you can use my link. I'd appreciate it. That's how I get credit, if you use my link. And you can use the stripey block canes in that class to make the scarves and hats. I show you how to make all the hats and put the snowmen together and build the snowmen. So I hope you enjoyed this. And we will go right back to doing the decorating part of the Christmas trees. Now I need a third tile. I'm going to put my bacon bond roughly in the shape. Pick up my tree. Nope, it came apart. Always assemble on paper. Don't try to press it together on the paper though. Just be careful. Pick it up, unpast all the joints. And touch that top down and just let it slide off. Press it together. Now this is my bud setter tool. I've used it in other videos. It's got 2 needles. You can see that. And when you get these little specks of some other color, it's great for picking those off. Or you can take a piece of Scotch tape and touch to that. Now I'm pressing up on the trunk and all seams towards the seam next to it. Okay, so there's my third one. And the next step will be cutting out lots of circles and shapes to decorate the trees. Then we'll be baking after that. Now, if you look here, this one has a little bit of crookedness to it. So there's 2 ways. It's such a little bit. I'm just going to use the side of my blade and press it in, rather than try to trim it in that little spot. And the longer these sit on the bacon bond, that's fine. They don't, I mean, you don't want to set them for days. But if they sit there a little while, it all, on the back, it all kind of melds together. And then when you bake it, you won't have this happen. Now, to fix this one, I would do the same thing. I put a puddle of bacon bond. Just put it on there, on the puddle, and then rebake, and it'll be good to go on with the other steps. And I'm going to clean this up, and I will be back shortly. Hi, I just wanted to come back and show you this tree that I made. I made this after the video was actually done with the scraps of everything I had left. And I needed a bigger one for a backdrop for my little snowman video. And it's very thin, and I will probably use it on something else. But I just want to tell you how I did this. I have my 4 colors of clay here. My shadow clay, a darker one, a medium, and my light. And I got 3 colors on the trunk. And it's built exactly like the rest of them. The only thing I did is I took my sheet, I cut long, thin triangles of the colors, and kept the darker ones on this side and the lighter 2 on this side, and maybe a light one here in the middle. And I cut long, skinny triangles, and I put them side by side in these alternating colors. So I had a big, long triangle of thin triangles made together. And then I just did the process like I did all the other ones. Cut it into thirds, put in my shadow here, and cut off, you know, my edges to stagger it. And that's all I did. That's how I got that pattern. It was very simple, and I thought you might like to know that. Okay, so now we're to the point where we're decorating our trees. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about cutters. Different types of small mini cutters you can use. These are Kemper mini cutters. I believe they are 3/16. There's a flower, a circle. Oh, I got 2 circles. There's a there's a teardrop. There's also a heart. Somewhere I have a little heart. These are some other small Kemper cutters. The star here, this was a Sculpey cutter from the Sculpey set. And these are the smaller Kemper heart stars. I have some bootlace ferrules of all kinds of sizes. Those are awesome for cutting circles. And I try to keep it simple. These are small, they're pins. They're supposed to be graphic. If you over decorate them, it's just too much. This is another thing you can do with your bootlace ferrules. You can get some coffee stir straws and drinking straws. This one just happens to fit just through it. So my two options are either to blow it out like I'm blowing a whistle, or to use something like this to push it out. I've pre-cut a few of these here. And we're going to decorate this tree just like this one, just different colors. So I've cut out this aqua color, and I have the larger circle. The smaller circle, maybe I'll do a different color for the smaller circle. Here. I think I'll do this color for the smaller circle. Now, this is a plunger cutter, so if I cut it and I use the plunger, it's going to make a mark. So what I do, put my clay is already textured. I'm going to turn it upside down. I just get a little water on there. It just helps them pop out of there easier. And when you're cutting, you can try to do this. If you see this green line in the middle, Christmas balls sometimes have, they're lined. I just cut random ones, but you can try to get where a prominent stripe is in the middle of your ornament. I'm just staying in the same color range. Over here where the stripes are small. One more, ought to be enough. Okay, I'll get this out of the way. Now also on this one, we have some garland stripes. And I will do the garland stripes with the same turquoise. And what I'm going to do is grab my little stiff, sharp blade here. Now, the widest one I need is going to be about, under 1.5 inches. So I'll cut about 1.5 inches here. And I'm going to cut, let me trim that off so it's even. I'm going to cut 4 little stripes. Try to get them all the same size. And you don't have to go right down the stripe of a line. I think it actually looks better if they slightly change. Just make sure your stripes are cut straight and they're the same size. I'll do five of those. Now that one's a little thicker, but I'll use that for a shorter one. All right, so now we're going to decorate our tree. This, as I showed you before, is a bud setter. It has 2 needles on it. It makes it really easy to pick stuff up. And the first thing we're going to do is our stripes. If you look here, I have 5. So I'm going to do this middle one first. Pick that up. Look for the middle. Touching it over here onto the tile to stabilize it. And then I'm making sure I get it nice and straight. And I push it down over there. Then the next one, just push down on one side for right now. Make sure you keep your textured side up. This was the one that was thicker on one side. I'm going to start that. I'm going to cut it off from a slight angle first. If it's on that angle on the tree, I want to cut it off. And then I'm going to start it right at the seam of the trunk. So what you're looking for is that your stripes go the same direction and they're the same space apart. I'll do another one for that. Touch it there. Stretch it from this side just a little bit. Touch it there. This one's okay. I think I can move that one down a little bit. Now, I'm not cutting it right up to the edge. I'll leave those little pieces hang over. After we bake it, we'll trim those. They cut really easy. I need one more at the top here. Before I put the top one on though, I'm going to cut the place for my star. Now, if you use one like this, there's always a difference in the shape. And to me, that looks the most even as far as an up side for the star. I'm going to center this interior peak right on the center of my line. Make sure my star is nice and straight, and then cut. And pull away that little bit of green. Now, if you remember, my stripes were rolled through on a 4, then textured on a 3. So they're much thinner than my green, which was rolled through on a 2 and textured on a 2. So I need a star that's the same thickness. So whichever color I'm going to use, I need to make a small piece that is the same thickness as the back. So I'm going to take a piece of this and cut it. Make it flat and even. Now some of this is messed up, but I'll get a nice star on this side. And I'm going to go through 0, 1, 2. I actually didn't need to do that. It went right through a 2, and then I'm going to texture it. Missed my texture sponge. And remember, it's always 5 times. Okay, so now that's the same thickness. I'm going to decide, do I want my stripes on my star going sideways or up and down? I like up and down. So now I'm going to take this and find a nice spot. That I like. And cut out a star. I think a straw does the least amount of damage. I'm going to put a new little drop of the bacon bond there. I'll hold that up so you can see it. See the little wet spot there. And then I'm going to slide my star a little piece of cardboard right to there. Position it. Texture it. Make sure my points are straight. Okay, now I can put my little Christmas balls on here. So I try to watch. My stripes are going this way. I'm going to put the coordinating ornaments with the stripes going the other way. And I'll do a large one in each section. And that's another thing to take into consideration when you're spacing your garland lines across, that you have enough room that your ornaments will fit in there. This one on the top goes right in the center. And then I need another little trim of garland because I lost mine. Cut off the excess. Don't worry about getting so close that you're cutting the clay. So we'll trim that off after we bake it. Texture side up, remember. These ones I'm going to put with the design going the other direction. And I wouldn't try to go straight up the line. Keep them staggered. Okay, so now, looking at that, I think I need I don't like this big one up here by itself. I'm going to cut a smaller one in that same color. Oops. Which means I'm going to flip it over and cut from the back so I don't mess up my design. And I'll put the blue one here and the pink one here. I think that is a little better. And this one, I think there's too much space there. So I'm going to take that little one off. And I'm going to replace that with a big one. That's how I decorate my own Christmas trees. The big balls at the bottom and the smaller ones at the top. So we'll flip this over. And I could even put a third one in there. No, I like two. I want to keep it simple. Okay, now just barely going to touch each one. I don't want to smash them out flat. They're already textured. Just going to touch the lines in the center just to make sure they're touched. As they sit there, by the time I get this in the oven, which will be at least a half an hour, they will meld to the other clay because it's all raw clay. Alrighty. I think I'm going to add a couple more little dots in here. There's just something in this center where this one doesn't look that way to me. There's something in the center of this one. So I'm going to go even smaller. And I'm going to get two more, smaller than the small one I have now, but not real tiny. So I'm going to get, I think I can use that same size one. I think that's better. And if you mess one up, cut a fresh one. It's not worth trying to save that for the distortion that you get. I think when you use the same color, like this one, well, that's actually two different ones, but there's a lot of pink. And I have a lot of contrast here. I think the, you need more ornaments, and you need probably 3 sizes. All right, now put another little blue one up there. Now I have these rows of ornaments in color rows, which is fine. And I'm going to do one more little green one upside down. Use my plunger to push that out. I think that's too small. I'll go to the next size. I work a lot this way. I just start and let stuff develop on my table. This needs to go vertical. There we go. Okay, this one. Now, another thing I could do, that star is very big and obvious. So if I wanted, I could put a circle in the center there. Or I can make a star with my stripes opposing the other direction. I think that looks nice. If I can get it on there straight. Okay, we're calling this done. I think that looks good. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to start our second tree. And this one I'm going to do a little more simple. Sometimes I like them just with a few ornaments on them. But I did want to show you how to make using your regular circle cutters. And let me get a different color here. I think I'm going to use blue. No, I don't want blue. I'll do blue. So, you can cut a strip of clay. That's really just a guide for width. And cut out some half circles, or just the edge, really. Now, I'm right-handed, so I can't just switch it over. I have to turn them around. And then use the same cutter. And I actually leave that in there, and you can line that up. Let me make sure I'm more under the camera here. You can line that up right, the edge, the inside edge that's hanging out in the air. You can line that right up on the edge of this. Get it exactly there and press. And you'll have two of the exact same size. I'm going to do a third one. And pray that they all come apart. And they should, because of that texture. I should be able to gently peel them apart without distorting them. And I think on this long tree, longer ornaments look good. And make sure that you get them straight, because if they're crooked, it's going to look off. It won't look like they're hanging. Okay, there's some blue ones. Maybe do a few purple. And like I said before, I really like using all just one color of stripes for the whole tree. But I figured just for this, we could see something a little different. Okay. Trying to place them so they're not in the same place on each level, so I don't get that staircase look to them. All right, now, let's see, another bright. That's too bright. Too bright. I think no, that either. Maybe some of this red. And I'll use my plunger cutter for that. So I'm going to turn these over. Let's see what that does. And sometimes you'll have a little crumb. Try just to touch it. That's my textured size. And I'm going to cut a small red one for the very top. I think that's too small. Okay. There's a nice little tiny one. Get it turned over so the texture is up. Now, to me, this still needs something. I don't want to put garland on it, although I could. So maybe I'll make some smaller. There's some red that got away from that ornament. I could make some smaller ones. I'll think about that for a little bit while we do some other stuff. Maybe I'll add something that on the end. Okay, now this one I started. And you can see there's a little bit of glitter on it. And that is only glitter that is from the garland, which is silver glitter clay. I textured silver glitter clay just like we did, ran it to a number 4 and textured it on a number 3. And I'm going to try to show you the sparkle. When you texture glitter clay, I might have to turn off one of my lights here. I think that shows better. When you texture glitter clay, this is what it looks like. As opposed to when you run it through smooth and you see the glitter and then you bake it and then it all disappears. If you texture it like this, all those little pieces of glitter are hitting at different angles when the light hits them. And sorry about that. And you get that sparkle. So that's what I did this garland with. Let me move this out of the way. And get my little... And so I want to make sure that I keep the texture side up. Turn this around so you can see. And that got mashed, so I'm going to cut a new straight line. And I'm just going to set it on there. Try not to touch it. You see these are coming down. That's kind of in the middle, so I'm going to get it there first. Let that side go. Pull the center down to the middle for the bottom of my drape. I think that's good. Touch that down there. Piece of clay. And before I tack this down, I'm just going to make sure I'm happy with the curve of the garland. Okay, I'll trim. Nope, something over here is not right. Okay, I'm going to trim off the excess of these. I better touch that down first. Now that I've touched it down, I might have to adjust the curve a little bit on some spots. By the time you get the ornaments on there, you know, it just has to have a nice smooth curve. Okay, now this one I'm going to give a silver star so that after it's baked you can really see what it looks like. So I need to follow up with this. But how I got that glitter all over that, I just took this glitter clay and just lightly tapped it around. Enough of the glitter falls out of it that just gives a tiny bit of sparkle without without using glitter clay. And I can guarantee you, you're gonna get glitter on it anyway if you're using any kind of glitter garland. So you might as well just go around and lightly touch it and add a tiny bit here and there. Okay, let's do the star on the number 2. And I'm going to texture. The reason I had to use that little sponge the last time is because I used this one and it's full of glitter. And I don't want to get it all over my other clay. 5 times through the pasta machine with the sponge. Repositioning it every time. I'm going to put my little bit of bacon bond. Oh, I need to decide what star I'm going to use. I think I'm going to use my middle-sized star. I'll line that up. Cut away a place for my star. Cut a star. Put my bacon bond. Drop there. Just needs to be a little bit. Get that smeared around. And it's okay if it leaks out from underneath your pieces like it is here. That'll turn clear. And after we bake it, you can just use a blade or scissors and trim that away. Okay. So there's that one. And I'm going to add a few silver ornaments to this. I don't think I want color. I think I'm just going to keep it simple and use the silver that I have textured out on the thin setting. And I'll just make some, get it off of my plastic. Got a mess going on here. I'll do some of this size. Lost my drinking straw. There. If I do that and it sticks in the clay, I just leave it there, because by the time you fight with it to try to get it out of there, it's going to get distorted. And I'm going to add a few smaller ones in here. So let me look at this one again. This is what we have. I'm going to move some of my mess away and get these lined up for you. Well, I lost one. There it is, right in front of my face. So these are the 3 trees I have. I'm going to add some more of a smaller size round ball to this one. And then after I do that, I'll tap all the balls down. And this one I need to think about I just don't think it needs any more. But since I got kind of primaries going on there, that's really bright. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I can. And I need a clean piece of cardstock because that has glitter on it. I'm just going to make some tiny yellow ones and scatter them around. It's upside down. If you're doing solid colors of clay, I think I need this one back. Take a smaller cutter and make an impression. You know, make a smaller circle impression in it. You can texture them in other ways, you know. If you're using solid clay, get a little texture on them. I think I'm going to add one more in there and then we're done. So I'll finish these up, bake them at the manufacturer's recommended temperature. This is Primo, so it's 275. I will probably bake them 30 minutes after my oven's preheated. That's just how I do it. My oven heats up, gets a little hot. Once I open the door and shut it, it comes down to the right temperature and then it just stays there. It's actually a pretty awesome oven. So I'll do that and then I'll come back and we'll finish up trimming these and doing the pin backs. Okay, we're back for the next step. Now here you'll see the trees are out of the oven. This is the one I repaired that had the top had fallen off. And you can see that very shiny area is the bacon bond. And see how it covers all the seams here and here? That's what that does. And there's very little left on the tile. If there is some left on the tile, just take your little utility blade and scrape it off. Okay, and then you usually do this on a tile. Get these shiny tiles out of the way so they're not blinding you. So you see this little piece of overhang. A lot of times if you just scrape on this back edge with your fingernail, that'll fall right off. Or you can take a razor blade and just cut it right off, and it comes right off. That's how you clean up the edges. Now, this is the tree with the garland, and you can see how far that bacon bond spread. So less is better. You don't need that much. But first I'm going to worry about these overhanging garland pieces. And they're so thin and easy, you just put your blade straight against the edge and chop. I gotta be careful next to the star. Oh, see, I wasn't careful. I knocked that one off. But I can put a new one of those on my next bake. And this actually works better when they're out of the oven. Once they've cooled just a little bit, they cut right off. That one needs a little more. Anyway, you get the idea. I'll replace that one. Okay, let's see. Here's another one with garland. Now this one hasn't been released from the tile. And when they're, like I said, when the tile's just still slightly warm, it's a better time to do this. But you can see that one too. All that high shine is the bacon bond. And I don't want to break this one. I usually do this warm. And I usually do it one at a time. I don't try to cut them all at once. There we go. Do this side. All right, and then take off that excess bacon bond. Okay, you get the idea. Now this one I want to show you. This was, I got some green on there. This was the glitter clay, and you can see how the texture has retained that sparkle. I'm going to come over here in the darker area because sometimes the lights, let me do that over here. Oh, it isn't going to work, but the lights will let you, the lights really show how much less sparkly it is. But you get the idea. You can see the sparkle. All right, now, the next step, oh, here's one I didn't do. Same thing on this one. I'll trim off that stuff. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put it back on one of these with the pin. All right, let's see. I'm going to do this one. It's all nice and trimmed. Now you have choice of two tools. One is an X-Acto blade, and one is this. It's a needle tool, but it's a special needle tool for paper piercing. It's called a Pergamani. I buy these from Donna Harriman Designs. I know there's other places. They're between $10 and $12 each, maybe more. I've seen them for more on the internet. But they're a very nice tool for this. I've tried making my own in sort of this fashion. This is the kind of pin that you get in a shirt collar when you buy a new shirt. But it just doesn't work. I don't know what the difference is, but this one works great, and I'll show you both of these. So I have on my number 2 setting, just like the front back, number 2 setting textured clay. I'm going to run that through one more time. Okay. And we'll take a little more bacon bond. And you need very little, just enough to get a thin smear. If it's, you don't want it ever to be slipping around, slippery. But you want coverage on 100% of it. And these are kind of fragile, so watch you don't press too hard. The bacon bond helps hold them together. Once you get the backing clay, it's not an issue. Okay, I have a spot on here, so I'm going to cut it so I know where it is, so I don't use it. We're going to put our tree on there. Now, I like to work on cardstock. I'm going to do this. because it lets you easily spin. I'm going to do one side with the blade, and I'll do the other side with a needle tool. We're cutting in on an angle, and it helps if you keep, not a lot of pressure, but just keep pressure. And it's always harder at the fine points, but just keep, you know, pressure so your clay doesn't slide around. And I'm going in at a slight angle. Underneath, I'm undercutting underneath. And here I have to go that way. Pressing where my blade is. Okay, take this piece off. Now I'll turn around and use the needle tool. This is more like drawing when you use the needle tool. But I still am holding that angle. And you want to be careful where the points are, because that's where you tend to lose the clay behind your piece. All right. Now that is all covered on the back. And you can see how it's angled. Turn it around this way too. You can see how it's angled. And I'm going to fix, I lost a little bit at my point up here. So I'm just going to pinch and pull that towards a point. I don't want too much. Then we're going to take our sponge and just press. I'm pressing onto the edge and slightly down. I'm not trying to squish the clay out. I'm just trying to texture that edge. And I'm pushing like on the edge towards the baked clay. There's a piece that got untextured. And a lot of times what I do is, so I don't have to touch the other texture, I'll hold it with a piece of sponge. But you want that clay all the way up to the point. You need it for the strength, especially if you don't have a star there that doesn't have a mass of clay behind it. So I'm pulling that up. I'm gonna maybe need to add a little separate piece of clay there. But the better you do this now, the easier your work will be in the end. And don't press it past the edge. You don't want to see it, like especially if it's a different color, you don't want to see it from the front side view of your pendant or pin. And pull just a little bit more up there. There we go. I don't usually smash it with my fingers that way and ruin the texture, but I think that's an easier option than trying to add a little point of clay there. Okay. All right, so that's textured. I'm going to press it down and give it another final texture. Check from the front. Make sure I don't see it. Now, there goes my trunk again. That'll be fine when I bake it. All right. So this one is done. Now we're ready for the back. Now, there's, in my upcoming PCA 2021 class, I do show you how to embed a back like this. down into the clay. But on this one, I'm going to show you the other way I do it. It's a little easier. And I had a pin out. Here's a standard pin back. This one is 1.25 inches. You can decide how big you want. I put the hinge at the bottom and the mechanism that closes the pin at the top. I've seen people do it different ways, but that's how I do it. Now, this is kind of skinny, so we got to watch. So the first thing I do is I get my pin back in place where I want it. And then you need a needle tool, not this needle tool. You need a good, strong needle tool. And I'm just going to hold it in place and go in between the metal on the bottom and press and make an impression. Okay, and then we're going to take that out of there. Now, I want a little bit deeper impression. That one was pretty good. Sometimes you'll get where it's impressed real good in the middle, on the ends, but the middle isn't. If that happens, just take your X-Acto knife, and I'm just working right in the center, and I'm going to trim out just a sliver of clay. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but what that does, I'm going to put this back in the space and get it lined up. And then I'm going to go over it again, but this time I'm pressing a little harder. What that does is it gives the clay somewhere to go as you're pressing down. Now, another thing I do, I'm going to leave that pin on there for a second. Right next to the pin, and just the main body of the pin, not too far towards the ends, I'm going to just poke a couple little holes down both sides. Okay. Then I'm going to lift this off. Okay, and then this is ready to get baked again. And how I bake it now is I get a tile. And a piece of paper towel. Now, there's no kind of varnish or sticky stuff on the front, so paper towel's fine. It's a little big. And I'm going to bake that just like that. One thing I'm going to show you real quick is fixing where that piece broke off. You can't see anything, but there was a little piece there. So I'm going to take a new strip. I'm trying to get it face up here. Okay, I won't need that much. And then I'm going to take just the tiniest drop of this, and not even a drop, just a smear on there. And you don't really even have to do this because the clay will stick to itself. But I'm just going to get a little on there somewhere. And it's smeared out very thin. You don't need much. A little bit on there. I'm going to put this guy back on here. And that's the wrong, no, that's the right color. It's just, it's very different. Anyway, I'll probably put a different one on there. I got a very light strip. And get them in place. Slightly tapped it, make sure it's attached. and then rebake that, which I'll bring that back with the pin. I'm going to use the pin on half the star, but I'll start with the blade. So what I'm doing, I'm going to undercut. So I'm going to get my angle and just press. And I need to do this one. Cutting underneath of the edge of the star. Okay, this half I will do with the needle. Whenever working on things like points like here, it's better to drag towards the center of your item than it is out. Like instead of dragging out this way, it's better to drag in unless you're just doing a straight cut like this, where you're not pulling the clay in either direction. All right. And there's a little bit that needs trimmed away. But you can see on that star how it's angled back from the edge. And it's a little trickier to sponge that, but you will get it. Press from the sides to keep the clay in place. I'm pressing in from the sides of the point. And the closer you can get it to the edge of the front baked clay, the better, but you don't want to see it from the back. Like here, if you can see that. And I will trim that off. And I'll work on that and have this pin back ready like I showed you the previous one. I'm going to do it the same exact way. Press it in, cut a little sliver out of the center, repress it, and put my holes down the side. The reason I put the holes down the side, when we come back, we're going to glue this in with super glue. And then after that dries, we will add another piece of clay. And those little holes just gives that little bit extra grab when you put the clay in to attach it with the paste. And it just makes it hold that much stronger. So I decided that this one's probably too big to be a pin, so I'm going to turn it into a gift tag bag or ornament. So I've covered the back with clay, just like I did my pins, but I used a number 3 setting of clay instead of a number 2. It doesn't need to be that thick. I got a little speck of clay crumb here from something else. And I'm just, I'm not putting the time that I would put into a piece of jewelry. I am texturing the edge just to make it nice. But I did want to show you, I usually do this. This is a little name stamp I have myself made with antique letterpress letters, but there's people that make them and sell them. So I'm going to put my logo on here, and I misted it with water. And I made this myself pretty much with the binder clip. So that's there. And then earlier I made this. I'm going to put this present on the back. And you can see this is just a square of stripes with the same color, but the stripes going the other direction for the lid. These are two little teardrop cutters with a circle cut out of the center. And one of the circles I put at the top of the strip of ribbon. Very easy to make. And now I'm going to put that on the back. You can see my excess liquid clay. But when you're making thin pieces like this, that's what holds them all together. And then you can then apply them onto other items. I even have some cuticle scissors that will work for that too. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Little drop of bacon bond on the back of this. I'll smear it out to the edges. Put my little hidden gift on the back and get it centered. And just give it a good press. Using the needle tool to press the edges. And then I will, after this is baked, just below the star, I will drill a hole to have a string to hang it with. And I'm going to trim this up a little bit and get that in the oven with the others. Okay, these are back out of the oven. This is my one I decided to make a gift tag out of, or an ornament. And I'm going to show you how to drill that. And this is the one I showed you how to do the back. It's baked. And this is another one where when I pushed the pin in, it looks like it made a nice perfect mark. The problem with that is when I did that, the clay on both sides here gushed out. So that's something you want to avoid or fix it. The other thing that happens when you do this, when you go to put the pin back in on the next step, it doesn't quite fit. Those bumps keep it pushed out. So this is a much better way to do it. Don't push as deep, but on either case, you need to remove those little circle bumps. And this is a lino cutting tool. Speedball makes them. This one is Flex Cut. And you can just go in there and chip out that little bit of a bump. If you don't have one of those, I suggest you use a stiff blade. Cut away from yourself. And just cut into that. You could also sand it off if you had a little piece of sandpaper. Always cut away from yourself on something like this. Okay. So those are both gone. I'm going to take a little more off of this one. Okay, so those are ready for the next step. I'm going to show you the drill now, because that's an easy one. These are pin vices, little mini hand drills, and I keep 2 or 3 of them with the most sizes I use regularly so I don't have to switch it out. So I'm going to put the hole for the ornament hanger just below the star. And I'm going to find my spot. Now this is an ornament. If this was the earrings or something, I'd be much more precise. And I'm hoping you can see that. I'm going on an angle, but I really need to go straight up and down. Okay. Once I got it started, that easy, Just goes in and out. Always start with a small bit first, and then go to the next size. That way you won't crack your clay, especially on such a small area. And let the drill do the work. Don't force it in. Just turn it with the lightest pressure, and it'll work its way through. And then I usually go from the back side. Okay. That one is ready to be strung on a ribbon, or a string for a package, or a wire for an ornament. Now I'm going to glue this one and show you how I glue. This is the glue I use. It's just Scotch Super Glue No Run Gel. And I buy the single use, and they're not really single use because I can't seem to buy a big bottle and I use it once. The next time I go to use it, it's all locked up and bad. These have a cap that you put on them. When you first open it, you put the cap on and tighten it down, and that pierces it. Then it has this secondary cap, which is replaceable. And these are the only ones that I can get the glue on a second or third time to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue down in that channel I made and go just up to the edge, but not all the way, because you don't want it goozing out. And I do take a needle tool and try to push just a little bit down to that bottom part of the hinge pin. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a little excess there. This is going to be covered with clay. When you put these back on, make sure it's very tight, and it'll last you to the next time you open it. Okay, so you can see the glue I have in there. And I lost my pin. There we go. I'm going to place my pin and use a needle tool because I don't want to stick to my big fingers, and get it in place. Pressing that down, and you hold it for a second. And when you're baking these, if you press your pen in and it's nice, you can leave it in there and bake it. It'll keep your channel more exact to the shape of the pin. Now, if you didn't know, super glue, what activates it is moisture. So this is a water mister bottle, and I'm just going to hit that and let that moisture sit on there. And press this down, and you'll see when I show you this in a minute, the glue will turn white. Just going to hold it on there a second, let it activate. Now I'll let this dry just a little bit more. I don't want to pour it. I don't want to chance it, but you can see the cloudiness down in those holes. Super glue is normally clear, but when you hit it with the water like that, that starts the activation process. You can see right here around the edge of that hole where it oozed out that it turned white. So I will let that sit, and I'll prepare clay for the back, and when it dries, I'll be back to show you how to put the pin back on. You can see, and that's ready to go. And I'll be back in just a few. Okay, my glue is now dry. You can see it's all white and chalky. Make sure it's fully dry. If you do this and and it cures and it's holding your pin back on, give it extra time to dry. Once the super glue is fully dried, it won't ooze out. But if it still has moisture in it, it can bubble out the sides of your clay. And you can see that white chalkiness, that's the super glue from when it got wet. But it really makes it set up fast. I've had some things and you keep holding it together, and the glue never seems to work. Now I have to cut a piece of clay as long as my pin, the space in my pin. And that needs to be a little shorter. Okay, that just fits. I will probably just take a little bit more off of that. Okay, and then normally I would cut a rectangle to put over that, but since this is smaller up here, I'm going to cut it on a trapezoid. And it's got to be wide enough to cover the pin. Okay. Okay, that's wide enough, and it doesn't go over the edges of the pin. So I'm going to take some bacon bond and add that to my pin. And at this point, it's good to have a little paintbrush. This is a makeup paintbrush, but it's just easier to control. I'm just trying to have it on the pin at first, and that's probably way too much. And then I'm just going to go on each side of the pin a little bit, just a little bit past the edge of the pin. And then I'm going to just put a little bit on the back of my clay piece. Get just a little more. I want it on there, and I want it thin because I don't want it spreading out onto my already baked clay, because bacon bond will look dull compared to the clay, or even chalky if it oozes out, and liquid clay will look shiny. You can use either one. If you're using liquid clay, let it set on the clay for a while and it'll absorb in and not be so slippery. Okay, so I still got a different color of green, but that's okay. Now I get it in place, and first I'm pressing in at an angle. Remember, the glue is holding the pin. That pin's not going to fall off. It could. I don't ever use only glue. I've never had glue not fail. But I got it attached. Now I'm just using my sponge to make sure it's good and attached. Any sharp edges, I want to texture those so they just don't look like a raw piece of cut clay. And go down the center one more time. And I'm going to put my logo on there. I have to use this wet because otherwise it sticks. And now, see how that's squished out? That's what happens if you press a pin back into the back of your tree too much, but that's all right. I can press it in. I pressed my name stamp a little too hard. I will probably redo that. No, I think it's all right. But I am going to just straighten those sides up again. Using the back edge of my blade. All right, then we'll have one more bake on a paper towel. Make sure your mechanism works before you bake it, that it's free and not blocked up. All righty. Other than the final bake on this, these projects are done. I have 2 more to make pins out of. I hope you enjoyed my class. This will be the first of several using my stripey block canes. I hope you go watch that tutorial. I'll have a link in the bottom. I will also have a link for my Build a Snowman workshop that's now a free YouTube channel workshop class. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy claying, and thanks again. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a share. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for future notifications of my classes. Thank you.